Yes, I'm gonna broadcast this on YouTube.
Okay. So,
It's
are
live
we
now.
on?
Yes.
Okay. So, hello, good afternoon, everyone. So, I'm going to be giving the talk today for my Nida's recollection entitled Formation. So, first, I want to explain the outline of my talk today. The first one is I'll talk about what is formation. The second is the need for formation. And the third are the different aspects of formation. So the first one is very important. We have to understand what formation is, what sets it apart, what does it exactly mean when a person is formed. Okay. So when we think about sporting events or sporting competitions, we think about the training that these athletes undergo through in order to be able to perform a task. So formation is something similar to that, but is also different in one way. When we talk about formation, in particular in sports, in that aspect, only talks about the physicality of doing something. That over time you would be able to do a task better and better. That I think is how people look at formation in terms of sports and physicality or like competitions are. But that is partly explaining what formation is, but it's not complete. So when we talk about formation, Christian formation, we want to develop the entire person in the process because one can actually do stuff or one can actually be better without digging or going into the core of why we have to do certain things. For example, we are trying ourselves to be formed, to be humble, to be kind, to be generous. But one can go through generous, kind, and humble actions without being truly humble, without being digging deep into the reasons why. And formation is ideal in the sense ideal for rather it goes beyond just delivering what is action, but it also forms one's affect, emotion, intellect, and will, such that the virtues are developed. So virtues are not just well, the simple defs that we know from Aristotle that virtues are good habits. But when we dissect what good habits are, for example, what's a good habit that we have? Like a simple habit is probably a good habit that we have, hopefully, is like brushing our teeth every day in the morning. We don't think much about it. We understand its rationality. Our affect and emotion goes into protecting this particular good thing that we're doing every day. Now, magnify that towards a specific action, towards, I don't know, um, okay, being honest in exams, right? One can just be honest in exams as a matter of fact, right? But then not going really into developing the virtue of honesty. So that's what I'm trying to say. That is formation. We try to look at the entire we form the entirety of the person, not just whether he or she does something. It is more on the core of the person itself, his or her disposition on a particular task or sorry, on a particular virtue. The second is understanding formation. Why is there a need to do so? Because doing something, um, because getting virtues or being formed is not something spontaneous. So nobody in the world is formed immediately. So I was one of the more important questions that people always ask is, for example, are athletes trained or born, right? Or in the case of people who do a lot of physical tasks like surgeons, they're asked, are they born or are they made? Now, there's a lot of literature about this, but it is my humble opinion that these things are made. They're not actually born. So talent can only bring you so far, But if you really persevere towards doing a certain action, you would um, still be able to do the task, right? So this is a little bit in contrary with the first point, right? About like actions and stuff. But what I'm trying to bring here in the second idea is that there's a need to be able to do so. There is a need to be able to form, so rather, there is a need for one to be able to be formed. We are not spontaneously virtuous. We are not spontaneously good Christians. And so that's the important thing to take note of. Or everything, the affect, the will, the emotion, the disposition, and of obviously down to the execution of the action has to be formed holistically. So that was the second point. So first, formation is not only just being able to do a certain action or being able to fulfill a certain virtue, but it is all encompassing to the person. Is the idea that we must, it is not something spontaneous, it is something that we need to build to over time. And there are the different aspects of formation. So we go through the different aspects of formation, realizing that these aspects of formation are actually not, is actually something arbit- artificial. We've just made it in our head that we develop the person in several aspects, not realizing that one aspect is linked to another. So for example, professional formation, one is able to acquire certain skills in being a good professional. Let's say in being a good architect, or let's say in being a good physician, lawyer, doctor, um, professor, salesperson, businessman. All these professions will in some way develop other aspects of our formation. So for example, the apostolic dimension of our Christian formation. For one to be a good businessman, one has to understand the needs of others, right? Because you offer a service, and that in a way is connected to the different means of formation. So when we split it into these things, which are professional, apostolic, cultural formation, we create that artificial thing in our mind. So, what is the key point in trying to highlight certain aspects of that for me, cultural, professional, academic, whatever, is that when we form ourselves, it has to be holistic. Okay. So which is the last point of my talk today, which is when we talk about formation, it has to be holistic. So to explain it quite clearly, Frankenstein is a good analogy to this. So Frankenstein is a monster that has disproportional limbs to one's trunk. So he has long limbs, a short trunk, a stunted head, relatively small head. And so that makes him grotesque. That makes him like a monster. So if information we lack in a certain aspect of our formation, we are like Frankensteins in that aspect. When one becomes too obsessed with a certain part of one's formation, for example, let's say apostolic formation, one becomes obsessed about only being thinking about the others, right? We, well, one might think, oh, wala namang mawawalan agad, di ba? But if you think about it, the person, di ba, the person is not only a function of giving to others, right? We also know that love is reciprocated. He also has to feel being valued, right? And that is important, right? We can't just give what we don't have, right? So if we gain certain virtues, for example, in a professional formation, in a professional development, so we can give it more to others, then we also develop that aspect, right? So I thought about this, like all those actually aspects of formation, you need all of them to grow together in harmony in order to become a better person. It's not enough to just give yourself. You also have to develop other facets of yourself. You can't just be okay. For example, now let's go another aspect of formation, like cultural formation, right? So you you this is kind of like you try to develop yourself culturally, right? But if you don't, for example, look at spiritual formation and you only look at the primacy of culture, of what other people think of you, of how you relate to human activity, you will see that in the end it falls short of meaning, because really in the end we're all journeying towards something spiritual, towards God, in a sense, in this recollection, since we have a good notion of our Lord Jesus Christ, we fall short of the recognition of Christ in terms of how it moves human culture. So all of these aspects of formation are related to one another. We can't just grow in one. So any person who tells you, who does not validate you in any aspect of this formation, fails to see the interconnectedness of all these aspects of formation. Okay, so now that we've laid out basic principles, how are we going to be formed? Okay? So, number 1 is that, well, this is off a little bit off topic, but it is in the recognition that we all need spiritual direction. We all need some form of direction or mentoring in the different aspects of our life: the spiritual, the professional, the apostolic. And that's the key thing there. Sorry, that's Tagalog thing there. We have to be able to find good mentors in every aspect of our life. And that takes a lot of time. That takes not a lot of time, but that takes a lot of finesse, and that takes a lot of discernment on our part. We need someone to be able to tell us, to be able to know us quite clearly, and to be able to demonstrate through time the genuine concern of our development. So it is also incumbent upon us. We're actually also very responsible for this, right? For example, we can choose our professional mentors. We can choose our spiritual mentors. We can choose groups that which we join to culturally so that we can hone ourselves. So that takes discernment. First, we recognize we need guides, we need lampposts. But second, we also need to choose those lampposts correctly, right? So, number 1, so to operationalize the need for formation, number 1, we recognize, we reflect today in this recollection the need to be able to find someone to be able to direct us in that particular aspect of our formation. And the second is that we discern whether or not this person, this group, or this avenue by which we grow information really addresses our need. And the third is that we are convinced, okay? We are convinced of that advice being given to us. We take it on our own. We have responsibility. We have um, operational control of how we operate our life. It's not something that we allow ourselves to be brought out to and fro. No, we discern it. We grab it. We grab its consequences. We even actually understand the limitations of people guiding us, right? Because that's the most Christian and responsible thing to do. We are always constantly being formed. And to end, I think that because this is a recollection, Catholic recollection, and I'm not just addressing a very generic audience, is the role of discernment in prayer and the role of because in the end there are circumstances in our life that also form us. I think it would be unfair to always think that we c- we are formed merely by our own effort. No, we are also formed by the circumstances. There is a Tagalog saying, nangungusap ang buhay sa atin. Ang mga nangyari sa ating buhay ay nangungusap sa atin. They talk to us. So the circumstances of our life really, in a way, shape the way that we are formed. And that's what's beautiful about St. Josemaria's message, to find the quid divinum in everything, because we are formed by our daily experiences. We are formed by the people that we meet. We can either say, okay, I will be bitter and I will walk in this particular path instead of taking the higher ground in a certain respect. So that's very important to recognize that our formation is also found in trying to integrate, hopefully, if we have an interior life in prayer, things that we see in the circumstances of everyday life. So to end, okay, we repeat on the key ideas of formation. Number one, what is formation and the need for it? We talked about it. The second is that, well, the important point there is that formation is not just doing stuff, it's not just being able to deliver, it's not the appearance of virtue, but it encompasses the entire person. The second is that for us to be formed, there's a need for us to be formed. We cannot be proud and saying, okay, that's it, I'm already perfect. No, we can always grow more. In third, in all the aspects of our formation, which should not be biased to a particular facet of who we are. For everything is important, right? All these aspects of formation are important, which allows us, right? Which and we are growing in every aspect because we recognize the need for people to direct us, to mentor us along the way. And lastly, allowing life to shape our decisions, because the decisions allowing our allowing life to be able to form us correctly by bringing to God these events. And that's it. So I do hope you have a good afternoon. And yeah, thank you.